Friday, including Shedeur Sanders. That's a crowded QB room that they got over there. What's the possibility of a trade or two going on in Cleveland?
Well, asking around after the draft, the sense I get is the Browns value or look at their roster through the prism of currency, through value, right? So that could lead to a potential trade down the road because it is a crowded room. Head coach Kevin Stefanski does like to keep 4 quarterbacks in his room. You see Deshaun Watson there, probably won't be a part of that because of the injury. So you roll with those 4. They gave up a 3rd-round pick and 2 5th-round picks for Kenny Pickett, Dillon Gabriel, Shedeur Sanders. Maybe they can recoup some of that if they showcase one of those players in the preseason or one looks good or there's an injury down the road. So we'll see what happens. They're going to give these guys a shot. They are very high on Dillon Gabriel. That's a player that I had earmarked going into the draft, was hearing from other teams that the Browns low-key really liked. He's a smaller player, so he didn't have a high draft status, but they love the way he plays the position. So we'll see if he can make a little move here.
I have a feeling you're going to be talking about the Browns a lot on SportsCenter this season.
No doubt.
In the past 10 years, the Browns have more seasons with 3 or fewer wins, and they have playoff appearances. That's crazy. But we'll talk about them a lot. Thanks.
Because obviously the story of the draft was the slide of Shedeur Sanders all the way into the 5th round. And I have not gotten your perspective on it through a quarterback's eyes. I have my own theory on how it turned out for him. But I just want to confirm, there were some people who were not that high on him going into this process. Well, obviously, many people, as it turned out. But is he a 5th-round player to you? I mean, if you were evaluating him and putting a round, a grade on him and say his play deserves to be an X round, what round would you have had it in as an evaluator?
Yeah, I think, somewhere between probably rounds 2 and 4 is what I would say. Look, my comp, and I said it on the show prior to the draft, Greeny, was, look, you hope that he could be Andy Dalton. That's what I said prior to the draft. And I said it because of the physical skill set. And listen, it was not an insult. Andy Dalton has had a remarkable year. I think he's in year 17. He's thrown over 250 touchdown passes. But that's what I thought. Andy Dalton was a 2nd-round pick. Other people compared him to Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins went in the 4th round, I believe. So I just think that, from a physical ability perspective, look, he was not a 1st-round prospect in my eyes, and I think many people felt that way. Now, his tape and production, I think it's fair to say, look, rounds 2 instead of round 4 could make sense for a lot of people.
That's my point. Okay, so that confirmed what I believe, that he was probably a 2nd-round caliber player. And let's use Andy Dalton. Dominique, I would suggest that a young Andy Dalton would easily be the starting quarterback on these Cleveland Browns. I look at the room that he's walking into. Joe Flacco, who is 40 years old, he too has had a terrific career, but he's 40 years old. Deshaun Watson is never playing there again. Kenny Pickett is on his 3rd team in 3 years. I know Dillon Gabriel was drafted ahead of him, but literally not one evaluator I know had Dillon Gabriel ranked ahead of Shedeur Sanders. He fell for entirely other reasons. The point I'm trying to make here, Dominique, is that while the weekend obviously felt like a disaster for him, the way it turned out, I think he wound up in a place where he has an excellent chance to play, which very rarely can you say about a quarterback drafted in the 5th round.
Yeah, I mean, I like the spin that you're putting on it, and I think you're right. He has an excellent chance to play. But you need to play well and play well fast if you're a 5th-round pick. And you're on a team that's probably projected to be near the top of the 1st round again next year. If he does not demonstrate in whatever time he gets in practice and in the games that he is a franchise quarterback, there's no waiting time. There's no investment in him. They're not going to go get all the pieces to put around him to make him play better like we've seen with Caleb Williams and other quarterbacks who are drafted in the 1st round. If he does not show that he is the franchise quarterback in this season at some point, they're drafting another quarterback in the 1st round next year. So I think you're right. He has a good chance of getting on the field, but he does not have a long leash or a lot of time to prove that he's the quarterback for this team for years to come.
I guess that's true based on the place that he was drafted. But if he had been drafted in the 2nd round, we'd be talking about him right now as the starting quarterback of this team. And he's the same guy, right? He didn't play a football over the last 3 months.
He wasn't drafted in the 2nd round.
No, I understand that.
That's the thing. It's like, be legendary.
Is their starter this year?
I don't know if he makes the team this year. I don't know if we could say that. He's the 5th-round pick who was the 4th quarterback on the depth chart right now. And the same insular world that told him to be legendary and you're a first-round pick and don't be a combine, workout guy and don't do the Senior Bowl and don't do it. I would hope someone is like, all right, let's reset this and say, it's going to be a little different right now. The path has changed, and everyone's assuming that that their light has gone off, and he's going to just come in and just be like, all right, I'm going to be a backup, be seen, not heard. I want to do everything I can to make this team. We don't know that.
Well.
So I think it's, yes, his ability. That was all along. It's what's reality, and if he gets to Browns camp and isn't willing to be the first one in, the last one out, and isn't willing to prepare the others like Dylan Gabriel will, we don't even know if he's going to make it for week 1.
Tim, I have a moment left. Go ahead, finish it up. What?
I think you're wrong, Mike T. I think you're wrong, and I think somebody like you will understand and appreciate where I'm coming from when I say this. I don't think the day 1 starter or the week 1 starter for the NFL season for the Cleveland Browns, as it pertains to Shedeur Sanders specifically, is going to be determined by just his play. I think all the stuff that has been said, all the stuff that has been reported, is erroneous as it may be in the eyes of a lot of people, including myself, as cruel as it might be in the eyes of people like myself in terms of what happened to him. I think that you had people looking to give him a reality check. And now I think what you're going to do is see people wanting to test his emotional and mental resolve as it pertains to that. As of yesterday afternoon, he was en route to Cleveland, from what I was told, in a pickup truck, ready to put on his lunch, grab his lunch pail, put on his hard hat, and get to work. That's what I was told in terms of yesterday about how he's looking at things right now. Anxious to go out there and show out. But you're hearing people out of Cleveland talk, Dom, about how Dylan Gabriel was their preferred quarterback, Big Ten Player of the Year, that kind of thing. They were saying that they looked at him. I don't know how, because he wasn't Shedeur Sanders, but nevertheless, they were looking at it. You look at Flacco. He's a fan favorite. They loved him in Cleveland. They never wanted him to leave after the job he did for them a couple of years ago when Deshaun Watson went down, and he came in and did his thing, okay? And then you're looking at Kenny Pickett. Now, I know that Kenny Pickett is a former Steeler. Then he went to Philadelphia. He's got a Super Bowl championship as a backup. We get all of that part. But in his last 17 starts, his record is like 13-4. And so when you look at it from that standpoint, I think they look at Shedeur as a long-term solution. I'm not saying he's going to sit out the year or anything like that. I wouldn't be surprised at all if he's the starter at some point this upcoming season, but I don't think he's a guy that's going to be judged by just his play. I think they're going to want to see whether or not that ego that people were talking about is something that they're going to have to concern themselves with. And unfortunately, I think they're going to test him. And that's why I think he's going to be prevented from starting week 1. Not because he won't deserve it. I just think they're going to test him. Listen, I get where you're coming from. And I certainly wasn't trying to imply that Kenny Pickett is going to start before him. I'm just telling you what they're saying about him. As it pertains to Joe Flacco, he is a fan favorite that took them to the playoffs a couple of years ago. So we have to pay attention to that. And he can fling that football, and that experience does matter. I'm just saying, when you put a quarterback in there that's a rookie, you got to be sure that he's your guy. And with Shedeur Sanders, and Dom, I appreciate everything that you said because you're right on point with all the points you made. I just think that when it comes to him, it's not just about football. And the draft situation